Now this is a bin I've chosen today. Sometimes people buy deeper bins, but I'm going to try this one because it'll be a little bit more manageable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill air holes into the bin because the worms need air. So I'm going to drill them. You can see where the lip is. I'm going to drill just below the lip, and you want to have a board underneath your drill so you don't drill into your porch. And I'm just going to drill in there. So what are you doing right now? I am making air holes for the worms.
Okay, so these are air holes for the worms.
Air holes for the worms. You have to have air or things start to rot. And so if you don't have a drill at home, you can always use an ice pick and a hammer. It's pretty simple. That's what I did with my first one. But now I got smart and saved time, and a drill works faster. But as I said, if you don't have one, this is a pretty big drill bit. And so when you drill around the whole outside upper top, so now I put all my holes in, and now I'm going to put in holes in the front because you're going to have runoff from the worms, and it's called leachate. And you want to make sure that that leachate is conserved, so you can mix it. I mix it with rainwater from my rain catchment system. Make sure you put the drainage holes only on one end. These are about 1 inch apart. So I'm going to drill in the outside as well, just to make sure the hole is big enough for the leachate to come out. Step 3 is damp newspaper. The newspaper that we shred and then we dampen is going to be the bed for the worms. So when you tear your newspaper, you want to tear it from the open end. You want to have it folded, not too thick, and you just want to take it and tear strips about the width of your finger, okay? And then you'll take those strips and you'll fluff them up because you don't want anything matted in your worm bin. Your worm bin should never smell, but if you mat stuff in there, if you pile in too much food or if you pile in newspaper and don't let any air circulate, it will start smelling. So if it's smelling, you need to make some adjustments. Because I live in Hawaii, on the North Shore, and because it rains a lot out here, I'm able to catch my water. This is my catchment bucket down here, and so what I'm going to do for my worm bin, I'm going to dampen my newspaper and I'm going to collect my rainwater that's been in here. And if you'll notice, right next to my catchment bucket is my aerobic compost pile. So this is another way that you can compost your garbage or your waste, your green waste. My aerobic compost pile is an aerated pile. It's nitrogen, carbon, green, brown, green. So you're ready to dampen your newspaper. Do just a little bit of, you don't want to soak it a whole bunch, but you want to get it damp. Because again, this is where the worms are going to sleep. So you just dampen your newspaper and keep it fluffed up, plenty of air circulating, let it drip off a bit, and just put it down on the bed, on the base, on the bottom. What you want to do too is make sure that the bin is solid. You don't want a transparent bin because the worms don't like sunlight. They're phototropic, so they like to be in the dark. So if they see the light, they're going to run away. So they're not happy if there's sunlight around. So there's my little bed, and you notice all my newspaper is very, very fluffy, and it's damp. Worms need to keep damp. So there's my little bed for my worms. So now we're going to go to my original worm bin, and we're going to get a handful of worms to make ready for our new worm bin. This is a worm bin that I built about 2 Christmases ago. And so that's 2 years. And you'll notice there's newspaper on top, and I have a plastic bag on this side. Now the reason I did that was because the sun comes in here and kind of hits the plastic and then hits the top of the worm bin. You have to make sure that your worms don't get too warm. So you want to protect them, keep them in the shade. down here at the very bottom. And I'm catching the
dripping.
jar, and I'll save it, and I'll mix it with some rainwater. So I'm just going to dump it out right now. So this is my runoff from the last time I gave my worms. So as you'll notice, I have a little angled setup here for my worm bin, so the leachate runs out into this container. So in the back there's a brick, there are a couple bricks, and then 2x4 pieces. Any way you can do it, however you want to set it up, you just want to make sure that your worm bin is on an angle so you collect the leachate properly. Welcome to our worm bin, and we're going to go inside of it now. Like I said, this has been up for about 2 years. I'm going to pull back the damp newspaper, which is was what we'll put on the worms, and you'll see I'm going to just get a whole handful of worms, and it's pretty deep, and you can see the worms right here. And I'll take these worms. As I put the worms in, you'll notice that they're going to all duck back into the vermicompost that they've made. So I'm laying them on top, spreading them out a little bit. And I'm now going to put the cover on because they've been shifted into a new environment. So they're going to be a little bit, maybe stressed a little bit. Well, the next step in creating your worm bin is to put the food in. Now, the food that you put in, you don't want it to be acidic. Anything that would sting a cut on your finger, you do not want to put in. You don't want to put any animal products, no eggshells, no meat, no yogurt. Don't put that in, or grains. Save those if you want to do a different kind of composting. Here we are. Now I'm going to chop up, these are just banana skins. We had some bananas that got a little bit too ripe, and I found over the last couple of years that I've been seriously keeping worms that they like banana peels and ripe bananas, not too ripe. You don't want them too acidic, or not acidic. You don't want them too ripe.
Decomposed?
Yeah, decomposed. So I'm chopping it up a little bit because actually the worms don't eat the bananas. The worms eat the animals, the bacteria, the funguses that grow on the better and more food you'll have for the worms, because that way the bacteria can grow on more areas. So you can see how the vermicompost has been spread. The worms are hiding out deep, and so now I'm going to put a layer of ripe bananas that I've chopped up pretty finely and spread it out across the top of the newspaper. Again, you don't want to mat anything down. You want to have plenty of air and space in which the worms can move, in which the air can flow, and you won't have any rotting. Last step is step number 6, and it's damp newspaper again. So you made a bed, then you put your worms in, then you put your food on top, and this is the last layer. So you see, you don't want it like staying in there forever. You want it damp. And again, you want it loose. You don't want to be packing it down and mashing it down and making it flat, because you want air to flow. You want the worms to have crawling space. In a short time that the worms will have eaten some of the newspaper, as well as the animals that live on the bananas. So the last thing we have to do after we put our layers in, and our last layer of damp newspaper, is just cover it. And you just put the cover right on, and then we'll take it to a spot where we angle it. And again, you want to make sure that the end with the holes in it has a little catchment, plate or basin or dish, whatever you want to put underneath. So now you're ready to start harvesting your vermicompost and your leachate. I just want to make sure you remember, this is a very important fact, that this is a special kind of worm. This is a red wriggler, and it's a kind of worm that eats compost. It's not your earthworm or the ones your dad uses when he goes fishing. So you have to get red wrigglers. And thank you for joining us today on the North Shore of Oahu. Please remember to take better care of the planet, and an easy way is to